Yeah. Tyler, do you want to admit folks?
Yep, I'm doing it.
Okay, cool. Jen, you are muted. Let's see if we can unmute you.
I gotta start my video.
There you are.
Hi.
Look at that! Look at that fabulous backdrop.
Put a backdrop up for you all.
Well done.
How you doing? Hi, Tyler.
Hello. That was absolutely wonderful.
Oh,
And,
thank you so much.
I'm feeling very good right now, for sure.
Good. Good.
Make sure everyone gets in here.
It is so beautiful, and
Thanks.
I can't wait to dive into this.
I haven't seen it myself in quite some time, so it like brings back a lot of memories, you know.
Oh my God, I bet. I bet. Yeah, it's just, I'm marveling at the meticulous nature of Dick's observations and what a comfort that is.
Yeah.
Especially right now.
Yes. Especially right now is right.
Well, listen, we're going to let everybody kind of get settled and join up in here. And while we're all kind of getting sorted here, I just want to do a quick intro. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight on this wonderful celebration of the Elwha River and filmmaking and connecting through friendship and saving the things that we love. My name's Mark Titus, and I'm also a filmmaker, friend of Jen's, and a fellow salmon nerd, and lover of all things wild. What you've watched tonight was Jen's film, The Memory of Fish, and we are super blessed and lucky here tonight to have an incredible panel on deck. Not only our filmmaker extraordinaire, Jennifer Galvin, but we're going to also have joining us Lynda Mapes, who is a wonderful writer for the Seattle Times, Russ Ricketts, who did some of the underwater photography for this film, Dr. Shaffer, who is just the central point of what's going on the Elwha near shore. Mike McHenry, who is a biologist for the Lower Elwha Clown Tribe, and also Philip Johnson, who was one of the original impetus, if not the original impetus for this film. And before we get cruising here, I'm going to turn it over to my compadre, Tyler, who's the campaign manager for our current film, The Wild, which is about to, kind of a long story, but we're about to start a virtual tour here. And Tyler is running the show for our Zoom Q&A here tonight, and it's going to kind of get us up to date on best practices. So go ahead, Tyler, take it away.
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us on here. I'm pretty much just going to make sure everything runs smoothly. And, after the initial panel questions, you guys are all open and invited to step in, ask some questions, and join the conversation. So there's a couple ways you can do that. There is a chat function here in Zoom that you guys can access at the bottom. You can write a question in that way at any time during this little thing we got going on. You can also unmute yourselves and just step in once we open up for questions. Or if you see the raise hand feature, I'll be looking out for that too. And so any of those ways, you're welcome to ask a question.
Thank you, Tyler. So we're going to try to keep it simple here, guys. We're going to do a brief intro of each of our panelists, and then I've got I'll have a couple questions for each folks, and then we're going to just open it up to your Q&A, so you can ask questions of these amazing human beings. Starting out with Philip Johnson. Philip first saw the Elwha River in the late 1993 when he moved to the Olympic Peninsula to work in the as a scholar volunteer in the Parks program. He authored an ONP, Olympic National Park monograph titled Historic Assessment of Elwha River Fisheries in 1997, and a doctoral dissertation titled Elwha, Value of a River, Managing Risk in the Pacific Northwest. That's in 2013. Phil first actually got to meet Dick and Marie Goin in early 1994 and treasures many enjoyable memories of long evenings shared at their home and adventurous field days shared together. His proudest moment as an amateur historian was finding the only surviving recordings of Dick's 1983 presentation to the Olympic Wild Fish Conference proceedings. He also generated original and primary scholarship to help understand the context and socioeconomic technological underpinnings related to the hydroelectric industry and state federal fisheries resource managers in Western Washington State during the turn of the century. Moving on to Mike McHenry. As a fisheries biologist for the lower Elwha Clallam tribe, Mike manages the watershed restoration and salmon monitoring programs for the tribe and has been working for them since '91. The tribe continues to advance restoration in the Elwha and other watersheds on the North Olympic Peninsula, as well as advocate for habitat protection. Active projects include co-authoring first peer-reviewed article of fish response to dam removal on the Elwha and implementing ongoing habitat restoration projects in the tribe's usual and accustomed area. Ann Shaffer, Dr. Shaffer is the executive director and lead scientist of the Coastal Watershed Institute, or CWI, a small place-based environmental nonprofit formed in 1996 that is dedicated to understanding, protecting, and restoring coastal ecosystems through community-led scientific partnerships. Central to Dr. Shaffer and CWI is the nearshore ecosystem conservation and restoration associated with the Elwha dam removals. One of the original authors of the original fish management plan for the Elwha recovery, Dr. Shaffer's work with CWI is now informing dam removal planning and actions worldwide. Woohoo. Moving on to Lynda V. Mapes. Lynda is a newspaper reporter and author, an explorer and reveler in the natural world, native plants and species of every sort. Lynda's photos in journalism and books are the result of a lifelong fascination with the natural world and our connection to it. She works from all five senses, and especially the critical sixth sense, which is a sense of wonder. Lynda was a Bullard Fellow in Forest Research, living at the Harvard Forest to explore the human and natural history of a single 100-year-old oak tree. You can read about the book on her website, lindavmapes.com, and subscribe to the Seattle Times to follow Lynda's incredible work as our lead environmental reporter in this region. Personally, just chiming in that her award-winning work on our Salish Sea orcas in peril in 2018 was absolutely amazing. My friend Russ Ricketts is also joining us. Despite beseeching my friend for his bio, he refused to send it to me. So I'm going to tell you what I know about Russ, which is that he's a dear friend, and he started a movement to enjoy and advocate for river snorkeling in our local river systems here in the Pacific Northwest. Russ lives with his family in Leavenworth and explores the Wenatchee River. I've been on that river with him. It's incredible, and a lot of the underwater photography you see in The Memory of Fish and in my films, both The Breach and The Wild, are thanks to Russ. Thank you, Russ, for being here. Last, but certainly not least, is our esteemed filmmaker tonight, Jennifer Galvin, who's a public health scientist by training. Dr. Galvin left a fast-track academic career path to pursue filmmaking, and glad we are she did. She had a knack for finding narrative in the numbers and wanted to use her research and storytelling abilities to put a face on societal problems and solutions. Today, she runs Real Blue, an independent film production and media company based in New York. For Jennifer, it all starts with a great story, and her motivations remain fueled by the maxim, protect the vulnerable. Love that. Despite being a human-centered story, her 2016 feature that we just watched, Memory of Fish, was one of 3 Wildscreen Panda Award Best Script nominees, the highest accolade in the wildlife film and TV industry, dubbed the Green Oscars. She's currently in production on a feature documentary exploring kindness in America. Thank God. It's called The Antidote, and developing several projects spanning fiction and nonfiction, including a music video with Vanguard jazz artists of Blue Note Records, a narrative series about the women of the Harlem Renaissance, and a documentary about a freediver. We're going to post links for all these folks during the chat here, but you can learn more about Jen at jengalvin.com. And on with that, you guys, thank you for bearing with this. I'm going to start out with Jen, with you, and look, you were talking about how it felt to watch this film after a while. That's exactly what I wanted to ask you. How does it feel to watch this beautiful piece of art now in 2020, knowing what we know about the Elwha and where we are here, especially right now?
I have to say, it really holds up, actually. I haven't seen the film in a few years myself. It came out in 2016, so it's about 4 years old now. And knowing what we know now about the Elwha, I mean, Dick Goin was right. And it's an incredible story of what can happen when you pay attention to things like he did. And just, I also have to say, being in the time that we are right now in this pandemic, some of his messages are really, really timely and poignant. So thank you all for showing up, and I hope everyone is healthy. So I hope that the movie provides some inspiration to help get us through and keep us determined and persevere through this rough time.
Thanks, Jen. So every one of you could literally write a book, and some of you literally have written books about the Elwha and this issue. And Lynda, I wanted to ask you, how did you get introduced to the Elwha dam removal? And did it stick with you? Did it have sticking power, and why?
How could it not? My first introduction came through the Lower Elwha Clallam tribe and going out there. This is back in the 1990s when I worked for the Spokesman Review to hear about this river and why it mattered. And I guess I think that I was so very touched by this film. I actually hadn't seen it until tonight, and it moved me to tears. The beauty of the humble stick-to-itiveness of this very Olympic Peninsula man. And I loved his love for the fish and for the place. And, I look at someone like Mike McHenry, who's worked for the tribe in habitat since the 1990s. I look at all these people who made this happen, and it really was the work of so many hands. And I think that for me, it was the place and it was the people who just made it an irresistible story. And I know for the public, it continues to be an irresistible story, because at a time when, as Jennifer says, we are so challenged, the Elwha is a story that actually shows us, number one, we can change things, number one, and number two, they can actually get better. And I'm hoping Mike will talk about what we're seeing in the Elwha with his expertise. I mean, the story of the summer steelhead is particularly incredible. So I'll just end it right there and offer my congratulations to everyone who made this miraculous recovery get started, and also for the film. I just think it's an incredible work of love and heart and hope.
Hear, hear. That's how I feel too. It's so much led by the heart, and also watching, Dick with his homemade cast iron dumbbells in his total Dick Goin, denim outfit. There's like literally no excuse to not get out there and do it. So, Russ, I saw you here at some point. There you are. I wanted to ask you, Dick kind of taught us how to be immersed in something bigger than ourselves. And I know that's a lot of what you do. What do you feel like when you explore our local rivers? And second part is, how do you feel seeing your images in that environment that you take up on the screen for us to watch here tonight?
It's a real pleasure to be able to donate my work to people like Jen. It was super inspiring to be able to be involved with her. It was really interesting. Like, I was never really an Olympic Peninsula guy, and this woman calls me and come on out and let's go look at it. And it was pretty intimidating being in the river so soon after dam removal. And it's definitely challenging to get those images at the time. I feel like I'm never going to be a filmmaker like Jen, so it's great to be able to donate just a little piece of my work to greater causes like that. And it's that's well spent. I mean, people spent decades working on this project, and to be able to just give a little bit of something to celebrate that is totally worth it.
Agreed. Mike, moving on to you. love to hear from a tribal perspective, what does a free Elwha mean? And what does the course look like from here?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the filmmakers. They did just a moving tribute to a man who, to me, was not only a friend but a mentor. And you know, when I first came onto the Olympic Peninsula as a biologist, part of what I had to do was to figure out what happened to this place. And there was remarkably little published information. In fact, I think the first actual trained fishery biologists didn't even reach the peninsula until the 80s, maybe the 70s, a few. And so we had already lost a lot. And I was looking around at the landscape and how forest practices were being conducted and the remnants of the Elwha River, which of course to the tribe was the most important river in their usual and accustomed area. And yeah, I was at a loss. All I could find was anecdotal descriptions from settlers of the abundance that was. And in getting to know Dick and spending a lot of time on rivers and learning to listen, I learned a lot from the man, and I miss him today, and it was really moving to see him again and hear his words. And yeah, so as far as what Elwha restoration means to the tribe, it's super inspiring. The Lower Elwha Clallam tribe is a little tribe that could. They sunk their teeth into dam removal and restoring the river many years ago, many years before I came. And they persevered with their partners in the environmental community, citizens like Dick, Olympic National Park. And so, yeah, we are into, well, basically a dam removal is an experiment in recolonization, salmon recolonization. And it's game on. We're in it, and then maybe as we go, we can talk about some details here and there. And I'll leave it with that for now.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. I had similar feelings about another great hero in this story, Russ Bush, who became a dear friend of mine, and I know you know him very well, and it's a character in our film, The Breach. So many people work so hard on this incredible story of restoration. Moving on to another one of them, Phil, I would love to ask you if you could tell us about that moment of discovery of finding Dick's recording at the Olympic Wild Fish Conference. What did that feel like to you in that moment?
Well, what we're talking about is the a lot of the voiceover that carried through the film. And at the end, it was sort of aqueous, Jen. That reverb echo effect was pretty cool. I like that a lot. Kind of Dick receding into the headwaters of the Elwha spirit world.
Totally.
I think Dick would have liked it too. And when I first got to know Dick, Sam Brinkman over at the fisheries team at Olympic Park introduced me. He was just up the path from where I was living. He kept talking about, God, he wish he could have heard, he wish he could hear again the speech he gave 10 years earlier. I was like, well, what speech was this, Dick? And he said, well, it was just up the hill at Peninsula College. And I swear I saw a video camera in the back somewhere. So this was the 1983 Wild Fisheries Conference that Roger Contour and I forget his name, passed away a long time ago. He was the first fisheries bio that the park hired, I think in '81. I think his last name might've been Cole. And it's kind of a big event. So I asked someone at Peninsula College who remembered the event a decade earlier, did anyone film that, and did you save the film canisters? And he said, I think we filmed it, and I wouldn't be able to tell you where they are, but there's a couple closets full of junk in the college, and we can unlock those closets and you can just kind of paw around. So it took me an afternoon, and there was one closet that was just head to toe boxes, and wouldn't you know, the bottom box in the back corner on the floor, the last one I opened, had all these old canisters. And it was the 1983 conference. Everything had been recorded. And so what do you do with a canister with a technology that's fossil? So we took it over to the IT department at the Peninsula College, and they're like, you know, we may still have the machinery that recorded this, but we haven't turned it on probably in 10 years. So then they had to fix the machine to run the canister. And then I wired up a cassette deck to it. And then we digitalized it, you know, 15 years later. And that's the story. And Dick was so happy. I mean, he was just ecstatic to have that piece of history back, because he was a central player in it. And in many ways, it's a recording of what happened. And in fact, I interviewed people who were at that meeting, and they all said that people were crying when he gave that talk. And it's just a powerful tribute to history, I guess.
It's a treasure, honestly. I mean, just lighting up hearing that story. Thank you so much for sharing it. Ann Shaffer, my dear friend Ann, I would love to hear, and I know everyone else would love to hear, I didn't know what the near shore was, really, until I met you. And could you tell us what the near shore is? And can you, again, we can write a book about this, but literally just encapsulate what you've observed overall since dam removal. I mean, just in a really big kind of picture way.
Right. Well, and so can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm finally got it figured out. So yeah, before I launch off on that, I do want to say thank you, Mark, and thank you, Jennifer and Mike and Russ, and yes, Lynda Mapes. You guys are all such warriors in this battle that we've all been at for our entire careers. And I think when we all started this, we thought we'd be a lot further along. And I think our collective testimony is how long these things can take and how hard they can be. But when you can get them done, when you don't give up, you can make some pretty remarkable change. And, you know, none of this could have happened without the films and the media and, you know, this ongoing push. So thank you very much. And I agree, it was really nice to go back and see this film in particular. It's a real, it's a beautiful film, Jennifer. And just to get to reflect on literally what was, and, you know, I haven't cried about it in a while, but I could in a heartbeat, you know, one of the most positive, affirming, powerful things that has ever happened. You know, I was levitated for a solid year. I can't imagine anything else in life that was that affirming as listening to those jackhammers on that dam. So thank you to you guys, and, you know, just don't give up, because it, you know, it shouldn't take this long. It does, but, you know, if we take one thing away from this, it should be, well, two things. One, we can get it done and it's worth doing. And the other is, you know, don't fuck it up in the first place. Excuse me. I'll say the excuse me for Dick. So there it is. And in the near shore, you know, that's that what we've coined the connective tissue between the marine and the watershed ecosystems of so many animals. And that connective tissue is a very resilient, but also a very fragile place. And we have learned how to screw it up just as well as everything else. And so when, and I'll ask Mike to remember this as well, when some of the planning was going on, I would come to the meetings, and the near shore was always at the end of the agenda. The meetings would always run long. I would have my 5 minutes at the end of the meeting, and everybody would be leaving the room, and I'd be rattling off the things that I felt should happen. And it was so affirming to go from being the last thing on the agenda to the poster child of the project, where these photos from Tom Gorda of these dramatic images of the river mouth with the delta forming and the sediment plumes. So that's, that's the two bits on the near shore. It evolved and responded immediately within weeks of the dam removal starting. We saw the plume. And there continues to be evolutions there. We still have restoration to do there, big restoration to do there. But just as in the watershed, what we've seen is the minute we get to those restoration elements, the fish and the ecosystems respond almost immediately. And just as we had our Eulicon in the lower river within 18 months, it's spawning in the lower river within 18 months, the dam's coming out. We're now seeing after we've gotten a large reach of armoring off the East Delta, we're now seeing surf smelt spawn along shorelines where they haven't spawned. Well, we haven't documented them there before. So that's the near shore, and that's the connection. And thank you again.
Thank you, Ann. It's the highlight of my week when I get your newsletters. So thank you. So we're going to open this up, guys. I know there's probably a ton of questions, and I see Amy's already got one. Another salmon warrior who was featured last week, Amy Gulick, author of The Salmon Way. Do you want to unmute yourself and just ask the question? There you go.
Sure. Hi. I'm just curious, what's the current status of the Elwha king salmon, and is that original genetic stock still, does it still exist? Is it still part of the river?
Yeah, Amy. So the Elwha Chinook stock, the good news on Elwha pre-dam was that the stock is native. There's been very few incursions of other stocks into it. It was propped up by hatchery production. However, there was so little habitat left in the lower river that it basically became a hatchery population. 95% or so of the production is hatchery. So now we're into dam removal. Dams are gone. Chinook are moving upstream and they're spawning. However, we have not had great survival of those fish spawning. And so the population is still being propped up by the hatchery. However, I do have some good news to report from our smolt trapping. And we've had good returns of these hatchery fish. Again, they're dominantly hatchery. And in the last 2 years, we've had between 7,000 and 7,500 returning adults return to the river. Those fish are spawning and they now are producing large numbers of smolts. I can tell you last year we had almost 600,000 sub-yearling outmigrants from our smolt monitoring. And I can tell you that in this year, we're going to be in 7 figures. So when those guys start coming back, I think you're going to see the population flip from a hatchery dominated population to one that has a lot more natural origin recruits contributing to it. And that's one of our important metrics for starting to dial back hatchery production, because where we're trying to get here in the long term is a natural self-sustaining wild population.
Thank you, Mike. Ed is joining us from the East Coast, and I see here, Ed, that you're working on a similar fight. Do you want to chime in and ask one of our panelists a specific question?
Well, one thing is we're fighting re-licensing of a dam, and on the Union River, the Ellsworth Dam. And part of what we'd like to do, the dam's been there for 112 years and has no volitional safe fishway, has not had that for 112 years. It does have an entrapment feature to take 350 alewives over a second dam up into Graham Lake. But the Union River's the border waters for both the Passamaquoddy and the Penobscot tribes traditionally. there was articles written related to it back in the 1840s by surveyors that said there were large quantities of Atlantic salmon and shad. It's a long fight. Of course, we're fighting FERC or sending information to FERC and the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. And we're fighting or trying to negotiate with Brookfield Renewable, a Toronto company that owns most of the hydro dams in the state of Maine. I guess I'm just looking for direction. Our local salmon, the Down East Salmon Federation, has been working very hard, helping us out. Any direction for how to keep the fight going?
Lynda, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that what you need is a tribe, small T. You need a tribe of people who love this river and care about those fish, and it's really going to take everybody. It's going to take a very concerted house-to-house fight. I mean, that's what it took on the Elwha. Looking back now, you wonder, gee, how could that be? It almost seems like a no-brainer, right? But it did. And even after the bill passed Congress, it still did. So, you know, your passion is going to be critical, but it's going to have to go viral. You're going to have a lot of people who just won't give up. And 112 years, that's a long time, but it's never too late. And these fish never give up if you don't. So I would just tell you that there's no secret sauce. There's no shortcut. You just got to duke it out like everybody else who's doing this work. If you have a viable local media, and I hope you do, I don't know, it's getting pretty thin out there. You definitely need to find some voices that can amplify your quest, put it out there. You know, it's work, isn't it? It's just work. So it really is that humble, and it takes people who can give a voice to that salmon. People like Dick Goin, and I'm sure you've got them there too. So, you know, I would encourage you to be bold and be brave and be persistent. It's the same old thing everywhere, wherever this fight goes on.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lynda. Thanks, Ed. Jen, you have a question from Amy. What's happening with your next film?
Oh goodness. So film has come to a screeching halt right now, but there's a few films in the works. I certainly am always looking for new environmental films, so that is really where my heart is. But I've been spending a lot of time talking to a freediver in France who's really into breaking the next world record under ice. So I've been doing a lot of research on freediving and extreme environments, whether it's populations that are living in extreme environments like in Tibet or Ethiopia, or animals that are doing deep dives and thinking about how they grapple with breath holding and what we can learn from it. And it's really interesting thinking about those kinds of things now, and then turning on the news and seeing a lot of people on ventilators. So I've been thinking a lot about health and hypoxia and breathing. And so those kinds of themes, I think, are coming into play with this freediving film.
Fantastic. I just put your URL up there for realblue.net. Folks,
and I also want to say there's people from the film on this. I just caught Gil Tommy, our incredible composer, and Victor and Begonia, who did the graphics in Calder. Actually, Begonia made this graphic that's right behind me, which I love using. So just wanted to shout them out. I think they're the only two, and then of course Russ Ricketts, but I think they're the only two. I'm trying to scan through the names. So, hi guys.
Gil, thank you guys, all of you. Thank you for your work. It's so beautiful, so moving. I see a hand up from Robbie. Hi, Robbie.
Hi, Mark.
So good to see you. I think about you all the time. I can't wait to come visit when this all.
Well, we'll look forward to that. We're working very closely with Mike and the Lower Elwha tribe. Just interviewed Francis Sunday. So Little Ennis Creek is very different from the Elwha. Mike could provide a lot more detail, but through the tribe, Mike did a wonderful restoration project that you've come to see on our conservation easement. And the Ennis Creek is where there was a ancient Clallam village, so it's very important culturally, and it's part of the usual and accustomed fishing area. So we've been working at this for decades, and some good news is coming along, and I've been so inspired by the film and by Phil Johnson and of course Mike and many other people. But we're going to make it happen. We've reactivated a Friends of Ennis Creek group. We've led dozens of walks to see the restoration so that people can understand the difference it makes. You know, when you've got the large woody debris in there and you've got the stream meandering again. And so it's a long path, but we're hoping to, we call it the last best chance of a salmon stream in Port Angeles, because of course the Elwha is a little west of Port Angeles. So thanks for your work, and I look forward to more help from Lynda Mapes has been so encouraging, and I know that a lot of the rest of you will be.
Thanks, Robbie. Yeah, and boy, I can attest to it. It's just absolutely stunning, the work you guys have done out there. Let's see, we've got a few questions up here.
Real quick, Mark, just want to point out, it can be pretty easy if you have written in a comment to accidentally send it privately to someone else, so it won't pop up and we won't be able to see it. So if you have happened to write a comment, just check if there's like a little like red private thing to the left of your comment box, and if so, then we aren't able to see that comment. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Tyler. So from let's see, gosh, sorry, from Lynda to Mike, talking about the summer steelhead. Can you speak to that a little bit? A pretty amazing Lazarus act, yes.
Sorry, I was muted.
Yep. No worries.
Yeah, really a pretty exciting story. So Elwha steelhead historically, and a lot of this was information I gleaned from Dick Goin. We had steelhead life histories entering the river almost year round. So there was a very large entry of winter run fish that would start in November and continue into March. We'd have a summer run life history that would enter in the later spring. And summer run fish are generally adapted to go deep into the watersheds, and particularly these cold snow-fed watersheds like Elwha. And it turns out their timing is genetically controlled. So they've actually identified the gene that controls that particular phenotype. And of course, dam construction obliterated that population. They could no longer get to their upstream habitats to over summer and spawn. And so at the time of dam removal, the summer steelhead population was negligible in the Elwha River. I think in the 20 years of my time on the river with the dam in, I saw maybe a handful of summer run fish. And so once the dams were removed, and actually before dam removal, we knew that there were still steelhead smolts originating from above the dams. So this was figured out by smolt trapping before the dams were removed. Small numbers of smolts were emigrating from the upper watershed. And so sure enough, with the dams out, that life history has been able to reawaken, if you will. And we've seen a steady increase in the number of summer steelhead, to the point where during last year's snorkel surveys in the upper river, 400 summer steelhead were seen in snorkel surveys. And there's been some work done with modeling their population based on those observations. And so it's quite potential now that last year we had maybe as many as 900 or to 1,000 animals up in the upper watershed, which already makes it one of the larger summer steelhead populations in Puget Sound. So really pretty exciting, and shows you the resilience of salmon, you know, when humans takes their collective foot off their throats.
It is very exciting. Yes, I haven't heard it that way. Thank you, Mike. So question for Begonia and Victor. Are you guys here? I don't see you, but maybe you are. Taking into consideration a lot of the imagery, footage, and photography must have come from different sources at different times. How complex was it to have it conform so organically in post-production? Jen, you can probably speak to that too.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, there you are.
Okay, good. Well, I'll let Begonia answer.
Well, the images to begin with were really beautiful, so it was easy to get inspiration from the source. Also, working with Jennifer was very easy, and she gave us very straightforward directions. So it took us some hours, many layers of color, but it was easy because the images, the sources were really beautiful.
I think what happened also is that as she started adding her layers of graphics, then it all became like one big composition. So she had to incorporate the archive footage or whatever it was, and plus the graphics, the titles, and it all had to have a color treatment to go with it. So it all kind of organically grew into one big long piece in a way.
It's beautiful. Where are you joining us from tonight?
Brooklyn.
Hey, welcome.
Clinton.
So glad we can all be together. Jen, do you have something to add to that?
No, I feel really lucky to have worked with Begonia and Victor, and Gil is online too, our composer. They're just some of the most creative people, certainly in New York, probably in the world. I mean, they're incredible minds, and they're so talented, and they were so patient with me in this film because I did have a specific vision, but you know, it was a true collaboration, and that's what I really wanted it to be, and I think that's why it holds up.
Go filmmakers. It looks like we got some kids joining us tonight. Are there any questions from any of the kids? Scott, anybody in your tribe want to chime in?
Well, I have the distinct pleasure of having known Phil for the better part of what must be going on over 30 years now, and having been privy to hearing the wonderful recordings of Dick Goin being shown amongst wonderful imagery from Phil and his slide collection at various Yale School of Forestry sort of slideshow talks that were wonderful. So I'm just kind of, loving to see this kind of take flight. And I think I actually have Phil and Sam Brinkman's audio cassette of this in my desk someplace that they asked me to take care of and get back to them. So I apologize for those guys. So it's a wonderful experience to have been part of just, kind of seeing this and just keeping the kids engaged in what's going on around them. We're in Northern California here. It's a lovely area. I went to school in Oregon. So I'll solicit them and see if they have questions. For the moment, they're just thinking this is all pretty cool. So appreciate the efforts from Jennifer and Phil. Yeah, one of them. The other one I think is off to games now, but this one here with me is thinking it's pretty great. So appreciate this, guys, and great to see some familiar faces.
So Scott digitalized the cassette tape long time ago. It's amazing how many little pieces come together for a project as ambitious as Jen's.
It is, and how natural it feels in the end. Cool shout on the Yale speaking of School of Forestry. Wow, bringing people together. I had the opportunity to speak out there last fall about Bristol Bay. So bringing us together here. There's a question about exactly as Amy always brings up, salmon bring good people together. Darren wants to know how can he sign up for a snorkel survey? And short of that, Russ, can you help a brother out?
Yeah, can you hear me? There I am. Snorkel surveys are happening everywhere. Lots of departments do them. The tricky part is, getting a hold of the specific biologists that are going to be leading an effort to go and look for fish. I participate in a few random ones with the state of Washington, the Wild Fish Conservancy. It's a lot of fun. It's work. It's usually, snorkel surveys are usually a fair bit of misery. It's not very sexy work in September or October when people are definitely not thinking about swimming, but that's when the salmon are back. I did want to kind of bring up just kind of an impression that I was realizing that when Jen invited me to go out and we went out there, I think it was October. Isn't that right, Jen? I think it was October. And it was cold.
Yes, it was very cold.
And
the river was roaring and it was cold.
Yeah, we saw all those elk. Do you remember that? We saw all those elk right below.
Trampled. We were shooting in the river. We almost got trampled by elk.
It's no hazard. But one thing is that the river was it was still murky at that point from the sediment leaving the reservoir sites. And, you know, we make an annual pilgrimage back. My family goes back every single year. And the river is amazingly clear when it's clear now. It's remarkable. It's a really gratifying thing to see it running full of fish too. That story about the steelhead is no joke. That's that amazing comeback. And I think we talked earlier, Shane Anderson made a film, a short 10-minute piece about the return of those fish that can be found. It's called Rising from the Ashes, isn't that right?
Yes.
I think it's out there. It's put out by Trout Unlimited.
Yeah.
And you can see that way up in the.
I sent you the link. Can you post that link for everybody?
There we go.
Yep, you're reading my mind here. This is time for links. So yeah, I'm going to grab that for you. As a matter of fact, there's Lynda talking about the nearshore coming back to life. You know, Anne, you kind of very quickly, and you did a great job of doing what I asked and encapsulated that. But could you maybe go a little bit more into why forage fish and that habitat with the eelgrass and everything that's now starting to thrive again is so important in the nearshore?
Sure. It's it's an interesting question. In the film, the question is the river mouth the beginning or the end? And from our perspective, it's both. And so for us, it's not just about the river mouth, it's about the entire shoreline. And so the Elwha project was primarily a sediment project. Certainly the dams were occluding the fish, but they were also occluding, upwards of 10 million cubic meters of sediment that ultimately was delivered to the near shore. So it was an incredibly sediment-starved coastline and river delta. And so what we saw almost immediately, and in fact, Scott's virtual screen is the perfect poster of it. We immediately saw this delta grow by, over 100 acres. And with that came all kinds of new habitat. And so the delta softened, it grew dramatically, and then the shorelines grew as well. And so over the course of the last 5 to 6 years, we've seen a large increase in the number of adult smelt along our shorelines. And it's impossible to draw a direct link between the Elwha and these smelt. But it's almost impossible to say that they're not somehow related. And given that we've had literally 30 years, 20 years of shoreline restoration throughout the Salish Sea, the Elwha dam removals being one of the biggest ones, where there's no question that there's a link between these softening shorelines, all of these now rapidly burgeoning and migrating forage fish that are in turn feeding salmon. So if you want big salmon, you have to have big things for them to eat. And particularly these Chinook and coho, the steelhead that run to the sea, they all need big prey, and those are big forage fish. And so we're seeing those along the shoreline now, certainly more than we've ever seen, again, in, you know, our 20 years of doing snorkeling surveys. And it's because this softened sediment from, at least in this region, the softened shoreline from the sediment from the dam removals. So it feeds right up the food chain. Once you have large fat forage fish, then you can feed your large fat salmon, and they can turn around and feed your killer whales. And so that's where everybody is looking to the future, and we're very hopeful. We're very hopeful. And if I could get my virtual screen, I'd put a picture of these fat forage fish up. So I'll work on it.
Please do. We all need fat forage fish. And yeah, boy, speaking of the herring spawn here recently, my God. Well, we're going to start wrapping this up, you guys. I can't thank my panelists enough, all of you, for showing up tonight. Jennifer, your film and friendship are a treasure to me. Thank you so very much for making it and for connecting us. As Amy always says, good people are connected by salmon. And just a shout out for next week. We're our Streamside chats next week. Same time, same channel. We're going to be featuring the work of Mary Kotsky, who's on this call tonight, and Affinity Films. And it's a beautiful film. It's a biopic about a Native American man named Samuel Johns, who found an incredibly innovative way to reconnect homeless Native folks in urban Alaska, in Anchorage, back to their tribal villages. And it's called And Now We Rise. And I had the pleasure of being able to consult on that film, and I'm really excited about showing it next week. So please do come back, tell your friends, show up. And if you're not on our email list at this point, definitely shoot us. There's a couple ways to get on it. Here's one. Just shoot an email to connect@thewildfilm.com and let me know you want to be on the list, and we'll put you on it. And then lastly, we are starting our film tour for the Wild. It's been a long time coming. We've had a few pretty serious course corrections. The most recent of which here, of course, was with the onset of COVID-19. But we're going to be rolling it out virtually with virtual events, much like this one. And starting this Saturday, we have a special screening for the Bristol Bay commercial fishing fleet, who bring us the world's most regenerative protein, and will continue to be the most regenerative protein as long as we leave their natal spawning rivers the way that they are, and not turn them into a giant mining district with the Pebble Mine. So please do follow along, sign up for our newsletter. We'll keep you posted every step of the way on the tour. And thank you all for coming far and wide from all across the country tonight. Stay connected. That's what we have here, and that's why we started this whole thing. And it's such a joy to see everybody coming together in this really crazy time we're in. Thank you all so very much, and be safe out there. Any other last words, Jen?
No, just thanks so much, and everyone stay healthy and keep up the good fight for whatever you're looking to solve.
It was good to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Great background, Dan.
Thanks, guys.
Guys.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye, Gil.
Adios.
Adios.